Foster.
Here.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Here.
Hickert. Crabtree. Bach.
Mayor, do you have any recognition
None
this
tonight.
evening?
None
This evening? Okay, so next on the agenda is those who signed in to speak, and I believe Mr. Volrath?
Yes.
If you like to step up to the microphone, and we will give you 3 minutes, and turn you loose.
I'd like to make this printed remarks available and then a flash drive that has my comments plus some photos.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my comments, I'm going to read this, make sure I get it through it okay. My comments are not intended to be critical of any individuals or groups, but rather draw attention to what I consider to be the overlooked and under-prioritized importance of Hammertown Lake and its watershed. I have a bachelor's degree in forestry from Michigan Technological University, Society of American Foresters, certified forester, been practicing forestry for 45 years, 28 years with the Ohio Division of Forestry, and 17 years as a private consulting forester. Hammertown Lake is without a doubt one of the city's most valuable and important natural resources. The lake provides clean, abundant, and dependable water to the city's residential and business customers. A fresh, clean, dependable water supply is paramount to the health and well-being of every citizen and business in Jackson. We are blessed in Jackson to have such a water source. Businesses and homeowners look at an abundant supply of clean, fresh, and dependable water as one of the top priorities when considering locating. Anyone who has knowledge of the struggles of cities and communities, industry, and agricultural producers in the western states and elsewhere in the United States knows the importance of water. Jackson is blessed to have had forefathers who established Hammertown Lake as the city's water reservoir in the early 1950s and acquired the land around the lake that makes up the city's watershed. Of equal value and importance is the Hammertown Lake watershed. Leaders recognize the importance of the watershed to supply water for the lake. Care was taken to acquire the necessary grassland and woodland necessary to supply the water that the lake needs to meet the needs of the city of Jackson then and into the future. Simply defined, a watershed is a land area that drains into a stream, lake, or river. In the case of Hammertown Lake, the watershed is the land made up of grassland, brushland, and woodland that drains into many drainages and small streams that flow into Hammertown Lake. The vegetation on the land helps to slow rain runoff and filter the water that ends up in the lake. Removing or disturbing the filter can result in soil erosion and degrading of the water in the lake. Such degradation can occur in a single rain event or over a period of time. In some cases, this can have a negative effect on aquatic life and increase the cost of purifying water used for a municipal water supply. In the past roughly 30 years, I have addressed Jackson City Council and or different city administrations on at least 4 different projects or proposed projects that had or could have had a negative impact on Hammertown Lake watershed and the lake. One project resulted in City Council and the administration suspending the project and the city having to pay a contractor $35,000 to stabilize the affected land. 2 projects were canceled by City Council and the administration, and 1 project was completed with the proper measures taken to protect the watershed and lake. Over the years, there have been yet other ideas floated for using Hammertown Lake and the surrounding land that have failed to materialize. In every case of these instances, the parties involved had good intentions, but ultimately were ill-advised or misguided. Recently, I contacted each member of Jackson City Council and invited them to meet me at Hammertown Lake to show them concerns I have about a current vegetation clearing project and silt plume in the lake. I met with 3 council members at the lake on February the 17th. I understand we all have personal lives and other jobs, and time is tight for all of us. I am not faulting anyone who is not able to join us for a show and tell on February 17th. One member who could not attend responded to my invitation that he would get there before tonight's meeting and that he had been at the lake 2 times in his lifetime. I have heard people say there is a lot of land going to waste, not being used at Hammertown Lake. It's just sitting there, and that land could be used for this or that. Hammertown Lake and the watershed is used every day by every resident of Jackson and every business in Jackson for a clean, fresh, abundant, and dependable water supply.
About 30 seconds. So.
Okay, I can do it. A lot of problems can be averted if all parties are open to each other. City Council needs to be informed about ideas for proposed projects, to actively be involved and have input. Professionals with expertise need to be sought out to protect the watershed and lake, and most importantly, keep the primary purpose of the function of Hammertown Lake at the forefront of decision-making. Following are images of vegetation clearing taken on February the 5th of this year. The images show the lake on February the 17th before a rain, and images of the lake taken on February the 16th after a rain. This should be a concern of every member of City Council and the administration, as well as the residents and businesses who depend on Hammertown Lake for their water. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And as I stated, I have a printed copy for the record with the photos, and then a thumb drive with the comments and photos.
Would you like to bring them and give
Sure.
them to the clerk for us? And doing so, comments or anything from council?
Is now the time to talk about it, or we want to talk about it under orderly business?
We could do either. Which, if you have questions of the speaker or anything that you would like to address to him specifically or anything, if not, then I do have it penciled in for new business.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Anyone else have anything? Thank you, Ms. Fulrath. Next, we will look at the approval of the minutes. A copy was in each of your packets. Is there any objections or corrections to be made to the minutes as presented to council this evening? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Peters is first, second by Mr. Newkirk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Next on the agenda, we will step into council reports. I will let council know that since Mr. Ondera has resigned his council seat due to his residency, the chair has asked Mr. Newkirk to head up the utility committee, and Mr. Newkirk agreed. And the chair thanks you for taking over that. So with that, I would say you have a report for utility, but kind of, not since Saturday, so, but thank you. Budget and Finance, Ms. Colby?
No report.
Thank you, Ms. Colby. Police, Fire, and Traffic, Mr. Foster?
I have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Service, Mr. Peters?
I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. The Auditor's Report, Mr. Reed?
I have no report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Kirby?
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Chief Hinch?
Follow the lead, no report.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor's Report, Mayor Evans.
You know I don't have that no report in me. I will update you, update council a little bit. There's really not much here on our projects. We have started the Mill Street Water and Sewer Project. I think David's going to hit on this, so I won't say much, except that we do expect traffic interruptions starting tomorrow on Athens Street, as well as some water interruptions in that neighborhood as we relocate that main water line that we talked to you about at the last meeting. That starts tomorrow. So just so you're all aware, if you get any calls, we are putting out notices. You may have already seen them. Really no update from ODOT on their projects that we're still waiting to finish. The Signal Light project, we've been getting some questions. It's still, I think March is what they're saying on it. And then the East Broadway paving for this spring, still online. They're still scheduled to be done. And I was going to mention about our Hammertown Lake improvements, the ramp and dock area. We are meeting the engineer out there. You might recall we got a grant a couple of grants actually, to make some improvements to the boat use area out there. We're meeting with that engineer out there tomorrow. That will be moving along. I also agree with Gary Ballrath, by the way, about the importance of that lake. Bellisio uses upwards of almost 1 million gallons some days, and it all comes out of that lake. And of course, them being our largest employer, that's something that we take very seriously too. I had mentioned last time about this year's paving project. We are still working on that list. I know I told you, Councilman Ryan, that I'd try to get that to you by this meeting. We're still working on it, but I will share that with all of council and the public as soon as we have it completed on. That's the list of streets that we hope to pave this year. We're also preparing a list for next year already. Some of the worst streets in town are still in line for gas company work this summer, so we're not paving them this year. And the fact that they're on next year's already might help satisfy some of you who are unhappy about that. But and then just as a point of interest, we have discussed it here before. Recently, we've been contacted by both Horizon, which is a phone and fiber company based out of Chillicothe, who has some service in the Jackson City, and Frontier, who provides services in the city. Both of them, we've been in talks with. Both of them are interested in and moving forward with projects to extend fiber within the city on city electric poles. So we've had meetings with both of them where they would be offering, in addition to what's offered in Sound by Spectrum, it may in the near future be also available from Horizon and Frontier but nothing's definite on them. But they both seem like they're going to do it, just a matter of when. Go a little farther than what Dan said about John Ondero seat on council. This Friday, the Republican Central Committee meets at 6:30 at the Republican headquarters on Morton Street to appoint someone to fill that seat. So anyone who lives in the city, a resident of the city, that's interested in that seat, they need to reach out to Brent Stepp, who is chairman of the Republican Party, to be considered for that, and probably should also show up at that meeting. At that meeting, they will listen to people who are interested, let them speak, and they will vote and select someone to fill that seat. So by the next meeting, we should have someone in there. And that's really all I had tonight, unless there are any questions.
Questions for the mayor? Hearing none, we will move on to Mr. Swackhammer, Service Director.
Several different items here. One, last year we did replace some curbs and gutters along Morton Street prior to the ODOT paving. We will be this week doing a little bit more backfilling with soil, seeding, strawing in that area. Next curb and gutter project, we're just finishing up on East Broadway. As everybody has seen, we will be moving over to Grandview Avenue later this week, but for sure by the start of next week. And we have posted some stuff out on the media sites. We will be asking people not to park on one side and then the other as we go through there replacing some curbs and gutters or doing repairs. Also, we're going to be putting in an additional storm catch basin over in that area to help get rid of some of the ponding prior to this year's paving plans. Starting today, from 7 a.m. through 7 p.m. through the rest of this week, Parkview Avenue will be closed. This is in association with Columbia Gas Project. We'll ask for everybody's cooperation. Don't want to have to tow vehicles in order for Columbia Gas to proceed, but we are asking that they try to make contact with all the residents. The city police is also trying to make contact each morning, but we want to keep those areas open so we can progress in those projects. As the mayor mentioned, around the what we're calling the Mill Street project area, we've already posted a boil advisory because we will have to shut off the water at approximately 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. This will be for about a 2 to 3 hour stint. That will be a line break, which will require when it comes back on for a boil alert, and that will stay in effect until further notice once the water comes back on. And this will be all homes between 788 Athens Street over to the railroad tracks. So all the Summit, Mill, Ohio, Putnam, all those streets over in that area. Basically from the railroad tracks there at Osco, all the way down over to the railroad tracks. So all residents, all businesses in that area do expect a 2 to 3 hour outage with a boil alert following until further notice. Also, there was a notice that went out on the Visitors and Convention Commission. They met today. There will be another meeting on March 6th at 10 a.m. here at Council Chambers. There were some awards that went out today, but there will still be some more coming up. So I was asked to pass that on as well. The city will be posting for some seasonal positions. Goal is by this Friday, if not sooner, to have those posted and up. We'll take applications pretty much through the month of March, with those starting in April when mowing season normally starts. So I want to make sure everybody was aware of that. We will also put that on the city media sites as well. I think that's most of what I wanted to go through tonight.
Questions for the service director? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Swikammer. Next on our agenda, we will go to our ordinances and resolutions. We will begin with ordinances on third reading. We'll start with ordinance 323. Ms. Kuhn?
An ordinance replacing and amending the City of Jackson electric utility rates as set forth in the City of Jackson codified ordinances as sections 921.06 through 921.10 and declaring an emergency.
Discussion? Ms. Kuhn?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Bach.
Yes.
Ordinance 323 is duly adopted. Next, we will look at ordinance 423. Ms. Kuhn?
An ordinance adopting policies and procedures for the interconnection of behind-the-meter BTM generators and Schedule SPP small power production electric rate applicable to energy supplied by BTM generators.
Discussion? Ms. Kuhn?
Foster. Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree. Bach.
Yes.
Ordinance 423 is duly adopted. Next, for council consideration is ordinance 923. Ms. Kuhn?
An ordinance of the legislative authority of the City of Jackson, Ohio, to authorize the mayor or his designee, the chief of the Jackson City Fire Department, to enter into a cooperative agreement for wildland fire suppression and declaring an emergency.
Discussion? Ms. Kuhn?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Pop.
Yes.
Ordinance 923 is duly adopted. For council consideration on second reading, ordinance 1023. Ms. Coon?
An ordinance for transfer of funds for the Hammertown Lake Improvements Project and declaring an emergency.
Discussion. Any further action to be brought on ordinance 1023? Hearing none, this constitutes the second reading of ordinance 1023. Next, we'll have ordinance 1123. Ms. Coon?
An ordinance approving additional appropriations for project expenses and ODNR paddling enhancements, ODNR capital budget, and city funds for Hammertown Lake Improvements Project and declaring an emergency.
Discussion. Any further action to be taken on ordinance 1123? Hearing none, this constitutes the second reading of ordinance 1123. Next, for council consideration, ordinance 1323. Ms. Coon?
An ordinance repealing and amending the City of Jackson's codified ordinance section 131.09 regarding riding in police cars.
Discussion. Any further action to be taken on ordinance 1323? Hearing none, this constitutes the second reading of ordinance 1323. Next, for council consideration, will be second reading of ordinance 1423. Ms. Coon?
An ordinance amending and repealing ordinance 819 and authorizing a wage increase for the positions of part-time police dispatchers and declaring an emergency.
Discussion. Any further action to be taken on ordinance 1423? Hearing none, this constitutes the second reading of ordinance 1423. Next, ordinance on first reading, we'll begin with ordinance 1623. Ms. Coon?
An ordinance to revise the codified ordinances by adopting current replacement pages thereto and declaring an emergency.
Could I get a motion to adopt ordinance 1623 as presented to council? Mr. Peters, is there a second? Mr. Crabtree, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Discussion. Ms. Coon?
This is just the adopting of usually our state changes. However, there are no state changes this time, but this is just adopting the replacement pages for the ordinances that we have passed in the fourth quarter of 2022.
Other discussion?
I move to suspend the rules to get our codified ordinances in line with ORC.
Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. Newkirk.
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters. Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Pop.
Yes.
Discussion. Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Pop.
Ordinance 1623 is duly adopted. Next, we'll move into resolutions. First one would be Resolution 1123. Ms. Coon?
A resolution authorizing an agreement with New River Engineers Incorporated to provide professional engineering services for the Mill Street Area Sanitary Sewer Replacement Project and declaring an emergency.
Can we get a motion to adopt Resolution 1123 as presented to council? Mr. Newkirk, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Peters seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Discussion. Mr. Swackhammer.
Yes, this is the third of the three projects in that area for water and sewer replacement. We were fortunate the same engineering firm has done all that work for us. We'd like to keep this moving so that we can continue to work on a timely basis. And I'd ask for council's consideration to let us enter into this contract.
Other discussion? Mr. Newkirk?
I move that we suspend the rules.
Motion by Mr. Newkirk to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Ms. Colby, seconds. Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters. Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Pop.
Yes.
Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Bott.
Yes.
Resolution 1123 is duly adopted. Next, for council consideration, would be Resolution 1223 on first reading. Ms. Coon?
A resolution authorizing an application by the City of Jackson to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources for the NatureWorks grant and declaring an emergency.
Do I have a motion to accept Resolution 1223 as presented to council? Mr. Peters, is there a second? Mr. Crabtree? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discussion, Mr. Schweckhammer.
Yes, this is just for an application. Application's due before June 1st. I'd like to move this one along if possible. We definitely have time. If the council wants to have any discussion on it, I'd be glad to have that.
Other discussion?
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules. This is a grant opportunity, so we need to take advantage of it sooner the better.
Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. Newkirk. Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster. Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk. Crabtree.
Yes.
Bott.
Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Bott.
Yes.
Resolution 1223 is duly adopted. Next, for council consideration, Resolution 1323, first reading. Ms. Coon?
A resolution authorizing an application by the City of Jackson to the Ohio Historical Records Advisory Board for a grant for the organization, preservation, and digitization of museum archives and declaring an emergency.
Could I get a motion to adopt Resolution 1323 as presented to council?
So moved.
Mr. Peters, is there a second? Mr. Bob? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discussion, Mr. Swackhammer.
Yes, this grant opportunity came before the Lillian Jones Museum. Their board had presented this to me to bring before council to allow them to apply for this grant opportunity.
Other discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Peters?
to meet the deadline of March 31st, I move to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend rules, second by Mr. Newkirk. Other discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters. Newkirk. Crabtree.
Yep.
Bott.
Yes.
Discussion. Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk. Crabtree.
Yes.
Bott.
Yes.
Resolution 1323 is duly adopted. Next for council consideration, Resolution 1423 on first reading. Ms. Coon?
A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Jackson, Ohio to accept the conveyance of 2.83 acres located behind Water Street from Jisco Lake Properties LLC and declaring an emergency.
Can we get a motion to accept Resolution 1423 as presented to council? Mr. Newkirk, is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Colby? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discussion, Mr. Swackhammer.
Yes, one of the major projects the city has this year is a little over about a $3 million project, which is both a sewer lining and a water replacement. Part of that process is obtaining easements. This piece of property owned by Jisco Lake Properties LLC, we were needing to get an easement to go across for the sewer lining project. When we approached them to acquire that easement, they in turn said that they would just like to donate the property to the city, and rather than providing us with an easement. So that is what this is for, to see if the city will take this piece of property. It is one that we either, one, need an easement for or need to obtain ownership for that sewer lining project to continue with the federal EDA grant.
Mr. Swackhammer, other discussion?
Suspend the rules.
Motion by Mr. Newkirk. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Crabtree. Discussion.
Mr. President,
Peters?
some questions.
Yes.
Does will this land qualify for no property taxes once we accept it? We don't need to accept some land and have to pay the property taxes on it. Is there any way, what's the deal with that?
I don't want to speak for Mr. Reed, but I believe it would qualify.
They'll let me file on this and get it tax exempt.
I would expect it would as well. While it had kind of high valuation, I think it was just because of the acreage. It's 2 acres, but it's only 47 feet wide. So it really has no other purpose except for this municipal purpose, which is going to be almost exclusively pipeline.
Where is it? This way?
And who knows what the auditor will do, but I would expect it to be water.
Other discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster. Yes. Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Pop.
Other discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Pop.
Resolution 1423 is duly adopted. Finally, tonight, first reading, Resolution 1523. Ms. Coon?
A resolution authorizing expenditure of funds for payment to G&J Paving Incorporated pursuant to a then and now certificate in the amount of $26,979.03 and declaring an emergency.
Could I get a motion to adopt Resolution 1523 as presented to council? Mr. Peters, is there a second? Mr. Bott? All those in favor say aye. Pose same sign. Motion carried. Discussion, Mr. Reed.
I'll take this one. This invoice was for striping that actually occurred at the end of the paving of last season. For some reason, it was missed by both the city and G&J Paving until we started opening up conversations this year, and they found an outstanding invoice which was dated back in January, which we had no records of. So this is a follow-up from the end of last year's paving. That's why it's coming through council, because of the dollar amount and as of then and now.
Mr. Reed.
To add to that, as far as the money was appropriated for it last year. It was on a PO, but the POs, the city not having a copy of the invoice or a billing for it, POs were closed. So there had to be a new PO opened, and that was done this current year. So there was money in the budget. They were actually under what was on the PO last year for their paving and their striping. But we're into this year. The PO was closed, and like I say, we have no records of the city or any of us of an invoice.
Reed. Other discussion?
I move to suspend the rules so we can pay this company for the work they've already done.
Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. Newkirk. Other discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters. Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree. Pop.
Other discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster. Colby.
Yes.
Peters. Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Pop.
Resolution 1523 is duly adopted. That concludes our ordinances and resolutions. Council, thank you for your work there. And looking at our agenda, I don't believe we have any correspondence. Any old business to be brought before council? New business. Mr. Peters? I thought you wanted to say something. You wanted to speak about Hammertown under new business.
Correct. I would just ask where we are with the concerns that were presented to us. What are our plans to keep this under control?
Yes, the trimming of brush around the bank there has been completed. It's been reseeded. I had Mr. Ron Aldridge, who is the superintendent of the water, walk the lake. He also has went back and taken samples. Nothing has shown up. He has said that it's been worse at times. When they did some logging years ago, they actually got worse runoff at that time. I have no recollection or any knowledge of that, but right now, we see the grass should be coming up the next month, reestablishing that bank. It was just where we had equipment in there mowing and cleaning off the shoreline. Now, we will have some again with the engineers involved with the new boat ramp and paddle dock that's been installed. I'm sure there'll be some disturbances again there. We'll have to continue to monitor and control that. But we believe we can do so and still maintain the quality level that the city has enjoyed and is very fortunate to have.
Other comments?
Can I ask another question?
Yes, sir.
Is there any way, in the one particular area where there's like a parking area for the horse? I guess it's just a parking area.
It's a gravel area,
Yeah,
top,
the
yeah.
horse trailer, people tend to use it more than anyone fishing, because it's high on the bank there. Is there any way, on that end where that cove is to get some silk fence? Especially if I'm standing there, it'd be to the left of the grassy area where the equipment drove through there. Is there any way to try to maintain that a little bit more than just let the water?
I mean, we can do a couple of things. We can do the straw bales, or we can do like what you've seen here in town with Columbia Gas, where they've tried to control it. And, or we can look at other options.
Well, I just would, it would be nice to hit the areas that are of the most concern, just to try to stop some of that, because
Okay.
honestly, if you seed it and we get a big rain like that, it might wash out again, so, I was able to go out there and look around, and, there's a lot of brush and things that were moved and hauled out and cut out, and I just hate to see, anything come of that where we jeopardize our drinking water, and it is, as Gary said, probably our most important resource that we have here in the city. And I'd like to see if we could, try to maintain some of that runoff, because some of those pictures, there's quite a bit of runoff.
Okay. I'll make a phone call into ODNR tomorrow as well, and see if they've got some recommendations.
One other question, and talking as we walked out there, that grassy hillside that is in the area where we saw most of that silt. I know you guys have talked about doing planting of trees and stuff. Maybe consult someone and see if that might be a good area to plant those trees, to try to mitigate some of that other issues that we may have going forward, so.
Okay.
That's just my 2 cents.
Other comments? Mr. Crabtree?
I just had a question about the street paving. When it comes time to pave South Street, and I know probably depends on other projects, I watched people kind of struggle to make the turn from South Street onto Burlington there at the top of the hill, especially when there's another car up there. Is there a way to shallow out that turn so that cars feel like they have enough room to get by? The same thing kind of happens as you're going away from town on South Street to Bennett. It's just kind of tight there. I didn't know if we were able to sort of flatten that out or shallow it out and then pave behind it.
Okay. We'll just have to look at it. The actual paving of South Street will follow that water line replacement projects, which will probably be in 2024.
Okay,
It won't be this year.
thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
While we're on the subject, with a lot of the new paving, there's seem to be some like grading issues on some streets. Like I know in front of Giovanni's on Bridge Street, if, where we just, took away the one-way there. So if you're sitting at, Bridge and, State Street where the three-way light used to be, going down to Pearl Street, the water runs, there's a storm drain on the corner of, going north. There's a storm drain right in front of Giovanni's, but the water runs across the street. And I know when it got really cold back in the end of December and in January, there was ice there. I know obviously they put salt and everything on it, but the water, instead of going into the drain, runs across the road and then on down the street. Just wondering if someone could look at that. Obviously, new pavement, water standing and running across it can be an issue. And there's some other areas too, throughout the city where water just stands on the road. I know we can't fix all of it, but with our paving that we're doing, the water gets under the new pavement and freezes one time and cracks and busts the new pavement. And I'd like to see some sort of effort to find places where there is standing water and try to either mill out the curb enough where it can run off or something. But there's a lot of places, and I know like such as Progress. I mean, we didn't know that we didn't have these issues because we didn't have any new pavement. So no one's upset that we have smoother streets to drive on, but would like to see us to try to protect our investment.
We did part of that last year there on 93 across from Manpower. There they turn into Kroger's. We actually milled that ahead of ODOT coming through there and to re-profile that. So hopefully you're not going to, that used to get fairly deep in there. And it still puddles a little bit, but it seems to get away a whole lot quicker than it used to.
Yeah, and then one other thing there too, on the bridge that is by McDonald's, if you're heading south out of town, up the hill, the bridge there, now I know they waited later and paved the bridge, but a lot of water stands there on that bridge too, and it has, blacktop and concrete on it, so after a while, water's gonna damage the work that they just did on that bridge too, cracking and whatnot, but water stands there too. I'm not sure what you would do there, but if you have a decent rain, have a look at it. I noticed a lot of them in the first ward, so.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Mr. Newkirk.
Yeah, well, I would think that if they make it a little thicker in the center, and the water would run both ways off the road instead of having pockets in the center of the road would help.
Other comments? Mr. Bob?
Is High Street on the list to get, or is that still bullseye of the gas company?
It depends on which side of South Street you're on.
Oh,
South of South Street is on the list for this year. North of South Street has got more gas work coming.
okay. And one other question. Do we have any plans for a citywide cleanup this year, or is that thought about? Yeah, I mean, it's only February, so what am I thinking of? But I just wondered if that's in the future.
Yeah, you're ahead of me, Pete.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just.
Hadn't even given it a thought yet.
I just thought, after I said that, this is only February. I mean, California's getting snow and we got 70-degree weather, so
Seems like spring here.
got mixed up.
Anything else to be brought before council? Hearing not, hearing nothing, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, there's one other thing listed on the business softball boosters. Do we need a voice recognition to changes?
You see that note on the agenda?
I was just told to put it on the agenda. It's on the new agenda. You didn't
Ah.
put the new agenda.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't put the new agenda in, so I don't know where it is. But I will entertain a motion to allow them to use council chamber If someone wants to make that motion?
Sure, I'll move to allow them to use it under the condition that we block off the.
And which they
I think
did,
it's just the boosters, not the kids.
yeah, they did Saturday, obviously. Is there a second? Mr. Crabtree, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Now I will entertain a motion for an adjournment. Mr. Peters, is there a second? Mr. Newkirk, second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried.